Good afternoon, everyone. So I am Anupam, a final year PhD student from IIT Gandhinagar. So I will be little bit deviating from what has been going on since yesterday in this symposium and moving beyond towards the adolescents and young adults. While I see a lot of discussion has been going on primary education as well. However, I will be focusing on FLN part of it. So basically, this particular paper was conceptualized to understand how the unpaid, like time spent on unpaid domestic work in the household can influence or have an influence on different academic performances and outcomes of adolescents and young adults transitioning to adulthood in India. And this evidence is based on two different states, UP and Bihar, a very culturally sensitive space as well. So we all know, and we have been discussing around how youth's education has been a catalyst for the socioeconomic development of the country. Especially, it is important in developing countries. And in 2011, nearly 50% of India's population was under 25 years old. But this share is projected to decline to 35% by 2036, while the share of the working population will be growing with an approximate of 80% increase. So, therefore, there is a need to understand the impact of education in terms of career aspirations of these young adults as well, who will be transitioning to the working population group. So, there are different policy interventions we have been talking since yesterday, which have been working and, of course, showing significant progress in expanding education for both girls and boys in India. However, we see that there is universal, almost universal enrollment in primary education in India, which is debatable again from primary research that has been conducted in different local bodies or by local bodies. We see that there is a substantial drop off rate in the higher levels as we move forward with age. For instance, while nearly 99% of enrollment is there for primary school, we see that by the age of 14 to 15 years, the enrollment reduces to 72%. For 16 to 17 years, it reduces to 42%. And especially when you see the higher education where it is 18 to 23 years, the enrollment percentage falls to around 28.4%. So this can be also seen the trend. This is the Udai's data trend, which shows this particular trend of declining enrollment over years of growing. But you see the disparity is also similar between. Sorry, there is the disparity is very less between the boys and girls, but it is still a significant decline. Now, apart from these challenges of retention beyond elementary education, there are also equity issues that we have been talking again about how marginalized communities still faces challenges in terms of getting access to education. And also, we have been extensively talking about the improvement of quality of education that is needed. And also, this aspect of higher quality of education is important because a different paper that we have been working on has shown that this early education, the quality of early education, is important in terms of how children tend to aspire and who they want to become. So, if you can see, this is a survey report of Udaya dataset, which was conducted, and I draw primarily from this dataset. Their report shows that by the age of 10 to 14, 15 to 19, you see that the literacy levels and numeracy levels are still very poor compared to other countries. And like, if you can see, 56, 73, 51% across boys and girls can only read class 2 text by this age. So there are a lot of research going on to understand what are the different factors that can explain this difference in educational outcomes of children or adolescents over time, how they different factors of the household, community, and the society are influencing them. For instance, in the individual and household level, there are gender issues where we know that there are son preference is prevalent in India. There are also nutritional status of children that are associated with academic performance, cognitive factors, and also parental attributes as well. Caste, religion, discrimination, and child labor, household wealth are also found to be strong associates of these academic performances. Also, what I am now trying to build on is niche or a important aspect that is moving from the what is going on outside in the community to what is going on inside the house. So time use and extracurricular activities, how a child or an adolescent is spending time in the household, can also determine how their academic performance and different academic outcomes can be explained through that factor. So what, and that is important because this domestic work, the unpaid domestic work, has been less explored in the Indian context. And when I mean unpaid work, it means the routine tasks like cooking, cleaning, childcare, collecting water, firewood. And these are all highly gender division of labor that we know, with girls carrying most of the burden compared to boys. So studies also show that girls engaged in domestic work are at a greater chance or likelihood of being dropped out. And these are mostly influenced by the gender stereotypes that are acting in the society and are reinforced to the society, and also lack of public spaces. For instance, a girl needs to go to collect water despite the societal norms say that she will go instead of the brother. But there is also a public infrastructural need that is pulling this effort on the need. So this is one of the examples for another study where we show that the girl is burdened of collecting water and she blames her gender herself. And at this very young age of 15 years, she understood her gender is a challenge in her own academic performance. So this paper, someone can access it, but that's for later. So what are the different pathways that we connect this unpaid domestic work and learning outcomes? One is the mental health and cognitive functioning, where longer hours of domestic work demands more and more results in more and more anxiety and depression. Less time, it also results in less time for recreational activities, which might have boost the motivation or helped in cognitive abilities. And then there is a relationship with less time and energy as well. So you will, if a particular individual is spending a lot of time in domestic work, for academic activities there will be less time and less energy left. And then we also see a lot of moderating factors. When I mean moderating factor is that gender plays an important role. The effect of doing domestic work at home, unpaid domestic work at home, on educational outcome could be different for boys and girls. This is because boys have additional layers of privileges that comes which they can compensate whatever they do or lost because of the domestic work. For instance, preference. There are also studies which have shown that parents invest more in boys' education compared to girls. And there are also another moderating factor, which is investment in educationally productive activities in the house. Irrespective of how much time I invest in doing household chores, if I invest adequate amount of time in doing my homework, or if I have the opportunity to do that, we can say that that will moderate the relationship that we see of unpaid domestic work and educational outcome. So there are three hypotheses that we technically explore in this research. To briefly tell you, first we see that how much 1 hour of time invested in the household work, unpaid household work, reduces my likelihood of good academic performance. Second, we see that if there is a gender difference between this relationship, is the relationship same for boys and girls? And the third, we see that if there is an existing relationship between unpaid work and academic performance, does investing time in productive work in the household can help me mitigate that effect? So these are the three research questions that we explore. So we used Udaya's survey, cross-sectional survey of the wave 2 only, where time use data was collected. The sample size is almost 15 to 16,000 with more number of girls. So the outcomes that we use in this particular study is about reading proficiency, where a particular person can read paragraph and story level or not, arithmetic proficiency, enrollment status, dropout status, and regular college attendance or school attendance. And our independent variables, as I explained, is time spent in unpaid work and time spent in productive academic activities. We control for a host of covariates that might influence the relationship, so we account for those. And we run three different models too for these three different research questions. So I'm directly moving to the findings. So we see that each additional hour of unpaid domestic work was related to the likelihood of dropping out by 10%, and 11% lower odds of attending regularly school, 4.7% lower odds of reading proficiency, and 5% lower odds of arithmetic problem efficiency or ability. We also found that 1 hour of additional time spent on work had a greater burden for girls, while for boys the effect was almost insignificant. And this is predominantly driven by the prevalent sun prevalent sun preference prevalent in the Indian households. We also have taken a solution based approach where we show that productive academic work mitigates the negative effect of unpaid domestic work on these academic performance. So boys on average also spend more time on academic work. There is a the disparity in that as well. This productive time spent by boys is more than girls in this particular data set. There are limitations of this particular study. One is that it is cross sectional study, so we cannot go for causality. Second is that these findings are only generalizable to UP and Bihar and not rest of India. Third is that the time use data, we calculated how much time they spend each day in different activities, was only used as a reference for the earlier day before the survey. So it is not representative of an actual average day that the child must be investing time in. But the strength of the paper is actually about the continuous measurement of every hour of time they spend in household work, how that influences the academic performance or academic outputs that we have seen about dropouts and all. And the second is the intersectional approach, where we not only look at from a problem approach, where showing that girls are burdened and boys or unpaid domestic work has an influence on academic performance, but also provide a solution where we say that productive academic work can actually mitigate the relationship. Because domestic work, unpaid domestic work in Indian households is also looked as a respectful thing to do when it is looked from a very modernistic approach, but also it is non it is inevitable. We Indian society functions in a way where that unpaid domestic work is inevitable. So basically, we say that our implication is that remedial education and NGO-led initiative can boost this learning of underprivileged children by providing this remedial education to boost up the academic productive activities. Quality public infrastructure can reduce the household burden, where the girls might not require to go and collect fetch water. Post education employment for girls can actually motivate parents to build up more investment for girls' education, which might reduce the disparities that we see in terms of burden. And lastly, we see that time use data is very interesting and also very critical for informing policy, because more and more research of quantitative and qualitative are being explored, but time use has more detailed way of understanding what an adolescent and child actually does in a day. And because we don't know what goes in the household much, so these national level surveys that are being conducted can be recommended to have time use data. And only Udaya and Young Life Survey are two data sets which have explored this. So these are my references. Thank you, and I'm happy to have questions.
Thank you so much, Anupam. And I'm happy actually someone took this forum and actually spoke about the unpaid, so to say, work and the kind of impact that you've noted on. Before I comment on anything further, do we have any questions from the house? Okay. One of my observation is, you may see towards it, that you talked about the domestic disadvantage that the female children at home are having, right? Still, I feel that you see that girls tends to surpass in terms of, if we talk about FLN outcomes, then also girls tends to surpass boys, right? And the similar data is also available in the higher education outcomes, right? They tend to surpass them, but still you are going with the hypothesis that girls are at a doubly disadvantaged kind of a condition, right? Still they are surpassing. So I'm just curious here that there might be some of the sociological factors that might be playing in the four walls of the house, wherein one of it, from my own understanding that I'm saying, can be that sometimes you see that the household work is so glorified to the female gender that I mean, doing that is a part of their lives, and then excelling in the educational outcomes again is the only weapon through which they can go out. So maybe a bit of a sociological perspective you may again explore. Yeah. Thank you.